Hey everyone, this is Greg Fenn, Camel River Guide Service, coming to you from Lake Sam, Rayburn, and I really appreciate you tuning in to this week's episode. Today we're going to be talking about some techniques of catching more crappie. You know, sometimes you go to the lake and they're just not biting as well as you'd like for them to. You'd like to see that hard thump, or you'd like to see that cork go under, but sometimes they don't bite near as good as they should. But if you know multiple techniques in catching crappie, and especially if you use your eyes of understanding, which tells you what the crappie are wanting that day, you'll be more successful. Some days you may go out and zero out, and that's fishing. I'll tell you a quick story about that. Back in 2004, it was the day after Christmas, in December the 26th. I went out and I had been catching crappie in the river at that time about 13-14 days in a row. We limited out every day. All of a sudden, this particular day, the fish shut off. They absolutely stopped. I never caught another fish after about 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning. Couldn't figure it out. Nothing had changed. No cold front, no change in the water temperature, nothing. I waited a couple of days and went back, and I think I caught 4. And I couldn't understand what happened to the fish. I could see them on the graph. They just would not bite. They call what we call lockjaw is what it was. They wouldn't bite for anything. So I waited about another 3 or 4 days, and I went by my favorite place over there to pick up some MINNOWS. This is back in 2004, and the lady said, "Well, you gonna try it again, are you?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm gonna try to. I don't know what happened to them. Maybe they'll bite today." Well, out of the corner of my eye, I saw an old man, had a big old long beard, and he says, "Say, young fella," he said, "did those crappie quit biting on you last Sunday morning?" I said, "Yes, sir, they sure did." He said, "Early in the morning?" I said, "Yes, sir, they sure did." He said, "They did me too, and he did all my friends up and down that river." He said, "You know what happened, don't you?" I thought, and I said, "No." I said, "If you know, I'd sure like for you to tell me." And he kind of winked at old Sue over there, and he got real serious. I knew he wasn't joking around with me. He got real serious, and he leaned forward and he said, "That's the exact time that tsunami hit Indonesia." I said, "Are you serious? Man, there ain't no way. That's 8, 10, 12,000 miles from here. There ain't no way that could have had an effect on these fish." He said, "Let me tell you something. When it comes to animals and fish and birds, they sense things way under more than we do, and the least little thing can affect them." Sure enough, I went back and did a little research on that, and that day when that 9 point whatever earthquake hit in that ocean, it kind of jilted the earth just a little bit, is what scientists say, like 1/100th of a second. It kind of done that, and it affected those crappie. Now, you can believe that if you want to or not, but I believe it. I've got a beagle at home, they tell me, can sense 10,000 times, has a better smell than I've got. And I know for a fact in Indonesia, they recorded that animals as far as 2 and 3 hours ahead of time started heading up to high ground, while over 250,000 people lost their lives. So for whatever reason, they can sense things better than we can. So there are going to time, I think that illustrates well my point. Sometimes you just go fishing and things just aren't right. They just won't bite. However, I would say 90 to 95% of the time, if you listen to fish real carefully, they're going to bite. So today's episode, I'm going to teach you multiple ways to catch crappie. Real quickly, number one is just float fishing with a cork. Doesn't really matter what kind of rod you use. I use a little 7-foot loose rod, and I fish a slip cork. You probably have seen me before use what we call a bopper stopper. You see it right there, that little stopper, and when I throw that out, that cork slips all the way up, and I can fish that at multiple depths. Now, the reason I like to fish a cork sometimes is because I can stay off my brush piles in the summertime and I don't spook the fish. Also, if it's a slight wind blowing, I can throw it over here and let it drift across the strike zone, multiple strike zones, to get a hit. So that's one technique, and we should talk about that a little bit later when we're out on the lake. When the bite gets tough, however, I go to my 10-foot rod, straight line minnows. Straight line minnows. And the key to this is when they're biting light, my daddy used to say they're sucking on it, Gregory. And he was always right. But when the bite is real light, what you got to do is watch this little tip. And if you'll even notice, I even paint my tips on these rods white so I can really pay attention to it real closely. If they're just barely hitting on it, sometimes they'll just start the line, they'll just start to swing, and you didn't even feel a bite, or even the line will come up slack. Those fish are on it. But if you're not paying attention to your rod and you're waiting for that one big hit, you're never going to catch any fish. Again, using your eyes of understanding, listening to what those fish are telling you. Another technique I like to use is the same thing but with jigs. And sometimes I go down to a 1/8 ounce jig, or maybe even a 1/16 ounce jig, and I put the body on it. I put just as close to what I think they're feeding on when they are feeding as possible. Now again, just to remind you, I use jigs from Timmy Tom's because they have a brush guard on them, and I trim that brush guard just right. I use pink and I use chartreuse colors. They work real well, but I use multiple bodies from different manufacturers. Bobby Garland makes excellent jig bodies. So does Bonehead, which isn't too far from here, up there close to the Tyler area. And even Mr. Crappie with Strike King makes some excellent jigs. And this is a technique sometimes where you get right over the brush pile just like you would your minnow. And again, you've got to watch your rod tip very closely, but it enables you to jig it a little bit and sometimes coerce the fish into biting. And the last way I want to teach you when we get out on the lake is to use a bladed jig. The same company, Timmy Tom's, makes a jig, but it also has a brush guard, but it has a little spinner on it. Now I like to use a 7-foot lose rod on this application because I'll back off of that brush pile, throw it over, past the brush pile, count it down. I'll talk to you about this on the lake, but usually 1 second per foot on a 1/16 ounce jig rigged up the way I do. So if that brush top is 8-10 feet, if it's 10 feet, I'll count down 9 or 10 seconds, and then I'll start just slow rolling it back. And when I feel brush, that's what I want to feel, but because this brush guard won't let you get hung up. And I'll pull it through there. When I get that any kind of a bump at all, easy, sit back on the hook, and you got the fish on. 4 different techniques of catching fish. We're going to go out on the lake and we're going to show you how it's done. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you learn something, because sometimes if you're too set on one pattern that is your favorite way to fish, that may be your way, but you're ruling out all other possibilities. So I urge you to be more flexible, be more versatile, and enjoy what we have here in the crappie world. I think you're going to enjoy today's program. So let's get out on the lake and I'll show you some of these more finer points of these techniques. So the first technique I'm going to show you today is, like I told you, fishing with a float. And I simply have a float, a slip cork, and I have a bopper stopper up above it, and I've got this bopper stopper set where I think it'll hit just about the top of the brush pile. And so we're going to try that depth, about maybe just a little bit deeper. I'm going to slide it up to about there. Now I use Engel boxes, minnow boxes. I think they work real well. I'm going to put a minnow on here right quick, and I'm going to show you how I put my minnows on. Might be different for you, but I put them in the bottom lip. I don't catch part of the gill, just that soft spot in the bottom of the lip, and I try to come up and get a piece of his head, and that way it makes it do that just right like that. The thing about a cork is you can stay off the brush pile. My brush pile is over there pretty close to that stump right there. So what I'm going to do, I want to be able to pitch it. So I don't want to reel it up real high like this, I want to have some swinging room. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to swing it out and let it fall in there right just about in the strike zone. Then I'm going to let the line out, so make sure that bopper stopper goes all the way to the cork. And we're going to fish that. This is the only technique that I use in the summertime that I don't actually have to watch the rod tip. On this one here, I'm watching the cork to see what it'll do. If I don't get a bite there pretty quick, I will reel it in and pitch it back out. Let it have plenty of line. Don't click your reel until you see the bopper stopper hit the cork, because if you do, then all you're going to be doing is pulling the cork back to you. So in this case here, I think I may be fishing a little too shallow. So all I got to do is come back up and drop it another foot, maybe 18 inches. And because remember, sometimes you got to get down there where the crappie are. Again, I'm gonna pitch it out, let the bopper stopper go all the way down before I click my reel. And let's see if we can't get a bite this time. There it goes. Now folks, this is how we catch crappie right here on Lake Sam Rayburn. Makes it really easy. And you can see this is a decent keeper. And stop reeling when the fish breaks the water. That way you can just swing it into you like that. You see that right there? Makes it real easy. The other thing is, you need to lip these crappie from getting yourself finned real bad. So just lip them, index finger and thumb. Notice that hook that just right in the top of the lip, right where I wanted it. Nice little crappie. And that's the technique I use for cork fishing. Very simple. So now the fourth technique I use is a Timmy Tom's jig that has a blade on it. And this is where I can throw it past the brush pile, count it down, and slow roll it back. This is a good technique for also staying off your brush pile. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to throw it well past the brush pile. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then reel back very slowly. Watch the tip of the rod. Any kind of a little jerk, you want to go ahead and lightly set the hook. Come back. I didn't get a bite that time, so I probably didn't get down far enough to the brush pile. Let's try it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Slow roll it back. Watch the end of the rod for any kind of a pop. If I feel any kind of brush, I just want to work it through it. Easy, real slow, roll it back. Real slow. Didn't get a bite. Let's try it again. Let's try it on this side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now let's roll it out this way. Watch the rod, the tip of the rod. Always watch the tip of the rod. There it is, right there. Oh, I missed him. He hit it though. See if he'll come back and hit it again. One more time. Let's try it again. He missed it. Go past the rod. Go past the brush pile. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. About 1 second per foot. 8, 9. Roll it back real slow. We're looking for a little tap. That's all we're looking for. Watch that rod tip. They're not responding to this bladed jig well today. And that's like I telling you, sometimes they don't want it a certain way. If they don't, then you got to try a different technique. That's all there is to it. Fish don't always bite the same way. And like I told you before, all these animals, all these fish, and all these birds, they're all different. You never know what they're going to do from day to day. When I was young, I used to go with my dad, and on the way to the lake, if we saw all the cows laying down in the pasture, he'd say, well, we'll catch fish today, but we're not going to do that well. We'll try one more time here. See if I can get a bite. But they definitely don't want this pattern that much. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Real slow. That information already tells me they prefer minnows today more than jigs. Because you saw me catch one on a minnow real quick just a moment ago. They're just simply not wanting that jig today. They're wanting that minnow. So what do? You go home because you couldn't catch them on a jig? Because you're bullheaded and that's the only way you're going to catch it? Well, then good luck to you. That's just the way it is. But if you want to catch fish, you got to listen to what the fish are telling you. So now I'm going to try straight line in a minute. Now to do this, I'm going to take my XI5, get my remote control over here, and I'm going to bump myself over a couple of bumps a little bit closer in to the brush pile where I set up on it, and I'm going to take just a straight line minnow. I'm going to hook my minnow up the same way I did before, because you know it catches fish. We saw it do that with the cork. Now here I am almost on top of my brush pile, and we know that brush pile is about 8 feet deep. Now I don't like getting up and anchoring. I don't like tying up to stumps, because that's why I like this XI5. It moves me right in where I want to be. I normally go down very slow with my minnow. Present just slow. I don't catch anything. I'll move it right over here, and I'm going to lower it down and right on top of that brush pile. I'm going to get about there. I'm going to go real kind of slow. I'm going to jig it just a little bit. He hit it. You watching that? You watching that? There he is right there. You seen, folks? You see that? I want you to look at this. What does that tell you? They definitely want minnows today. Is that a good crappie or what? I don't know about you, but that's a fine crappie any day of the week. Ain't that a beautiful sight? Look how thick that crappie is. Absolutely gorgeous. So we know they hit minnows. Well, I can catch these minnows today straight line, or I can catch them on a cork. They were not wanting that bladed jig. So again, I'm just going to do whatever they tell me to do. If I had people out here I was guiding today, I would definitely tell them we're going to have to fish with minnows today. Just in case, I'm going to go ahead and try a straight line jig. And on this jig, now this is not a bladed jig. You can see it's a Timmy Tom's jig, and I have put a Bobby Garland thread fin shad on there. And I want to just see for kicks whether or not they'll hit this or not. This is a good technique because you can get it on down there in the brush a little bit, but you can also jig it a little bit and coerce them into biting. There he is right there. So they will hit the jig. They just didn't want that jig on the move. You notice how that is right there? He bit it real good. Nothing wrong with that. Again, get them to where they break the water and pick them up right on in. Unless you want to net them, you can net these fish. But you can see these are good quality fish. And I caught that on the jig with a thread fin shad. That's the color of a Bobby Garland thread fin shad. Let's try that again. That was fun. I already know my depth. Now, here's a tip too. I'm using a 10-foot Mr. Crappie Slab Daddy. I like it because it's just fun to catch fish on. If these fish are 8 feet, then I know I'm gonna let that jig out at around 8 feet at the length of this rod right here, but I'm just not gonna put it all the way in the water. So I'm gonna fish this jig about 8.5 feet, and I'm gonna put it right over that, and I'm gonna dance it just a little bit. Watch that. I hold it still. Now here's where you gotta watch the tip of your rod. Hold it still, bounce it. Are they gonna bite it or not? They did that one time. Why not again? Gotta watch the rod, because sometimes the line will start going sideways or start coming up. I can actually feel that brush right there, so I'm gonna go up a little bit higher, get above the brush. I sure like to catch another one to convince you. This is summertime crappie fishing on brush piles on Lake Sam, Rayburn. And it is a lot of fun. Another tip, instead of reeling that line all the way in, take your hand and pull that line up like that. Swing it over and then drop it back down again. You see what I'm saying? You don't have to reel, and no casting is involved. Just pick it up, move it over about 3 or 4 foot. Yep, there he is. Oh, I missed him. I missed that fish. I think he was small, but I'm gonna try to see if I can give him another shot at it. I'm gonna put it down, I'm gonna jig it a little bit, I'm gonna hold it still. Up, he hit it. You gotta watch the end of that rod. The end of that rod is just barely dancing. I can tell already that's a kind of a small fish. He's not really wanting it either. We've got a full moon going right now, and a lot of these fish are feeding at night during that full moon, so you know, it's just like any other thing, us included, they're not gonna want to eat all the time. Let me move it over just a little bit, dance a little bit, see if we get a bite right there on that jig. Let me go just a little bit deeper. This water temperature here is about 90 degrees. It's been a very hot summer. Heat index out here this afternoon is going to be about 104. The regular temperature. The key here is watching the tip of that rod. So he is hit. They are tapping on it, but they're not hitting it. Tap on it. But see, they're not really wanting it. Although I caught one on that jig, and I probably could sit here all, you know, for a while and catch more. But I can tell right now, out of all my 4 techniques, they're wanting a minnow straight line better than any of them. So let me get this minnow back on this rod again. Another thing I want to show you too that helped me, what I did on the tip end of this rod, if you'll notice, I painted that tip end white. And the reason I did that, and you already put a piece of tape around, but I painted it white because I like to see the very tip end of that rod move. So you might want to try that if your bite is real slow on the end of some of your rods. Just put a little white paint on there so you can see. So let me put another minnow on here, and we'll see if we can catch another one right here, if they bite a minnow better than they do a jig. Still, there he is right there. You see him pull down that rod? He pulled that rod down. Look at him. Ain't that pretty? Man, that's good eating right there, and a lot of fun to catch. It really is. Again, when the fish breaks the water, just lift it on in. Don't reel all the way up to the tip of your rod. You'll break the tip of your rod. So I hope you can understand what I'm talking about. Nice little fish. Sometimes these fish want different techniques. So I've showed you fishing with a cork, and they hit it with a minnow. I showed you straight line with a minnow, and they did real well. I did catch one on a jig straight down. My option there would have been to change different colors of bodies to keep the bite going. The other option is back off and slow roll or pump a bladed jig through there. And although I did get a hit on that, I didn't catch any fish. This particular brush pile on this particular day in this particular water, the fish are telling me they won't menace. My guess, being a full moon or within a day or two of it, these fish fed last night in that full moon. And it's about 11 o'clock in the afternoon today, or in the morning. And these fish might bite better actually in the afternoon than they will right now. You can look at your cellular tables sometimes and that'll help you. But I just go by what they tell me. And today I know they won't menace. So if I had customers out here today, I'd ask them, you know, you want a straight line minnow or you want fish with a cork? Because I could help them become effective either way. So I hope this information helps you. We've discussed the 4 techniques of summertime crappie fishing on brush piles. Those are the 4 I use. I have many more techniques. We'll be talking about them as we go on into summer and a little bit later in the fall. And of course, wintertime, there's lots of different ways to catch crappie. And these are my 4 main ones at this time, right here around June, the end of June, 1st of July, on Lake Sam Rayburn in Deep East Texas. So I hope you enjoyed today's program. It was all about different techniques. We showed you 4 different techniques and some of the finer points of those 4. Hopefully it helped you in your fishing and you understand why I do what I do. There are better crappie fishermen out there than I am, but I'll tell you what, my guest pulled in over 6,700 crappie in 2017. So we're doing something right. So we hope you enjoyed today's program. If you're down here around Sam Rayburn in beautiful Deep East Texas, I'd love for you to stop in. You can always check me out on any of these YouTube videos, but my website is www.camoriverguideservice.com. You can go on there. There's a calendar on there to let you know when I'm available. Also, if you go over to accommodations, you'll find I have a little 2-bedroom, 1-bath cottage for you to stay in while you're here and enjoy your stay. I think you'll enjoy it. I guide people every day, and we have a really good time out there. And usually they catch plenty of fish. I'll come home, I'll clean your fish for you, bag them up, fillet them, bag them, get them ready for your freezer. And then a couple of days later, you'll receive a free video of your fishing trip, a free edited video. Can't get any better than that. And that's to preserve memories, which is really what it's all about. So this is Greg Fenn, Camel River Guide Service. Thanks again, folks, for tuning in.